So, I mean, that's it right there. The great secret of all spiritual fruitfulness and growth is learning to let God act. Welcome back to the What's It All podcast. We got another great episode for you today featuring me and just me. We're doing a solo episode again. Last week we talked about Father Jacques Philippe and some interior freedom that we often crave and need in our life, but our society doesn't really look at freedom the same way that we do with the eyes of faith. Used his book, Interior Freedom, to as a reference and a source material that I'm working through and praying through, and wanted to go back to that again today. I feel like Lent is a really good time to reflect, pray, what are we working through? Kind of that kind of training camp time to work in our spiritual lives. So we're going to jump back into Father Jacques Philippe today. And the theme of what I wanted to talk about is doing versus being. And then what Father Jacques Philippe kind of talks about, leaving room for God to act in us, where we don't feel like we have to fill up everything with all that we do. This doing versus being challenge is probably the most core spiritual challenge I face. I don't know about you. I've talked about this on the podcast before, this idea of like the checklist Catholic, what I can do, what I'm bringing to the table, what makes me holy is the things that I do, and then I'll really be holy. Now, I've had a lot of transformation on letting God transform me and enter my heart, and letting God's grace and the presence of God through sacraments, the Eucharist, and prayer transform me. And so it can be very egocentric to think about like, I need to do more holy things as a response to the spiritual life. It doesn't leave any room for God. All it leaves room for is my discipline, and it leaves room for my abilities. Okay, my abilities are going to get me to the top. Now, as a high achiever, I like to think of myself as someone who likes to achieve things, be successful in what I do, whatever I do. This can be a challenge because the spiritual mountaintop is not a real thing. You can't ever really ascend the spiritual mountaintop on this earth. And this can be stressful. This can lead to a lot of stress. This can lead to spiritual stress, spiritual OCD, spiritual doubt. It can lead to burnout, because there is no way to accumulate the greatest checklist and the greatest amount of discipline and the greatest morning routine to lead to holiness. Like we've talked about before, though, I don't want to diminish having discipline. I don't want to diminish being disciplined and having good habits. Those are very good things. But the end is not saying, hey, I prayed for 15 minutes every single day for 5 years. And like it's not the act of consistency. The consistency is a result and a fruit of the love of God as a response to the love of God. So the end is not the consistency. The consistency is the fruit from the love of God. I want to go into Father Jacques Philippe here. He kind of talks about this acting too much, this doing too much. He says in Interior Freedom, the most important thing in our lives is not so much what we can do as leaving room for what God can do. The great secret of all spiritual fruitfulness and growth is learning to let God act. Apart from me, you can do nothing, Jesus tells us. So, I mean, that's it right there. The great secret of all spiritual fruitfulness and growth is learning to let God act. And I know I've had that challenge so much in my life. Letting God act. It's hard. It's hard to let God act and move in my heart and in my soul. Why? Well, because I don't trust him. I've had to work on trusting him. Why? Well, because I've kind of looked at God's ways as human ways, and humans have let me down, and I've let myself down, so I think maybe God's going to let me down. And that maybe God secretly doesn't have my best intentions, and maybe God is just trying to scam me. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to really let God. I'll keep doing the checklist, but to really let God transform my heart, heal me of pains, bring me to places that maybe I don't want to go, That's really tough. Heard a great homily at church the other day where it was talking about Jesus raising people from the dead. He raised people from the dead 3 times in the gospel. He raised Jairus' daughter at home. He raised the widow's husband on the road. And then he raised Lazarus at the tomb. So St. Augustine talks about these 3 places of resurrection that Jesus wants to heal us. These 3 places that Jesus wants to resurrect pain in our life. So in places at home, places maybe internally that really just affect us, inside of us. On the road, outside, places that things that affect us and things that affect other people out on the road. And then places at the tomb where no one wants to go, where it stinks. It has a stench. No one wants to go to the tomb. So everyone just leaves the tomb alone, cemeteries alone. So no one wants to go there. And Jesus wants to heal us at these places inside of us, heal our relationships, and he wants to heal the deep, secret, stinky, stenchy places in our lives that no one wants to even touch. Those relationships, those wounds, those things that have happened in our lives that we don't even want to go to. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go to the tomb. But Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, from the tomb, obviously, and he wants to heal us and resurrect the pain and pain in our lives, even in the worst places, even in the stinkiest places in our lives, in our souls, and our hearts. But that's hard. That's hard to do. It's easier to say, hey, Lord, if I go to Mass every Sunday and pray for 15 minutes every single day, that's good discipleship, right? That's a good deal. Let's make that deal. But Jesus is like, that's not enough. I want to act. Not only do I want to act, I want to and bring fruitfulness to your life. I want to heal you. I want to go to the places that stink. I want to go to the places that have a stench. Go to the places that no one's going in your life and in your heart and in your soul. And I want to bring healing to that. I want to bring a resurrection to those places that you don't even want to go to. So that's hard. That's hard to let Jesus into these places, these stenchy places in our heart that we don't even want to go to. So it can be tough to learn to let God act in our lives. It's easier to do for God. It's easier to say, do for God. God, I'm going to do this for you. So I've always kind of had this tension with doing versus being. Doing holy things versus being a disciple, letting God act in me and respond by just being holy, by being someone who lets God act in their life. Father Jacques Philippe goes on to say, God's love is infinitely more powerful than anything we can do by our own wisdom and our own strength. Yet one of the most essential conditions for God's grace to act in our lives is saying yes to what we are and to the situations in which we find ourselves. So to receive God's grace, we have to say yes to every situation in our lives. That's hard, and that's a challenge. That's kind of like that's the next level of following God here, saying yes to the challenges, saying yes to the seasons in our life where money is low, saying yes to the seasons in our life where relationships are painful, saying yes to the season in our life where it's super stressful, saying yes to the seasons in our life where God's brought tension and stress and pain. That's really, 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 really hard. But what I love what he says right here is that God's ways are not our own. God's wisdom is infinite. We look at our eyes to the eyes of our own finite wisdom. And we say, like, nothing good can come from this. How the heck am I getting out of this situation? I'm never going to get over this. Oh my gosh. But the Lord wants to do a work in our hearts, and he wants to do a work in our lives, but we have to leave room for him to act. And I think that is the challenge because we think, well, it's hopeless. It's pointless. I can't see a way through here, so there's no way. But God's probably laughing up in heaven like, dude, I got this. You don't have to worry. I can flip a switch easily, make everything switch for you. You just have to bring me into your heart because he's not only trying to get us out of this season that we're currently in that might be painful, he's trying to prepare us for the next season where we can be even better. And so I think that Lent is like a great time to take the attention of ourselves and do a little more being. And, even though there's a lot of doing, which is, hey, what are you doing for Lent? There's a very common narrative, right? Hey, what are you doing for Lent? I'm giving up chocolate, no meat on Fridays, no TV, reading a book a day, whatever, a book a day. Even though we do a lot as Catholics for Lent, I think Lent is a really good time through fasting and praying and giving money away to take the attention off ourselves. And when we take the attention off ourselves, something kind of crazy happens. We open the door for God. I think we fill our minds so much with ourselves, our own thoughts, our own needs, our own expectations, that we don't let anybody else in and we don't really let God in. And God needs a little room in our hearts to really do a work. He needs a little room to work in our hearts. So I know for this Lent, I've been having a lot of ups and downs about what I'm doing, trying to do this, trying to be better, thinking about my life, the stresses of life, work, all these things are kind of stressing me out. And what I felt reading this in my prayer was this idea of like, hey, God needs room in my heart to work in me and do a work in me. And to do that, I need to let go more. I need to take the attention off of myself more. I need to stop having these expectations of what I can do to bring goodness in my life, what I can do to make all these things happen in my life, what I can do to get the greatest outcomes I want and desire in my life. Because, I love when he says the greatest secret of spiritual fruitfulness and growth is learning to let God act. And it's like, well, who wouldn't want to let God act? Of course, God, come on, let's go. Let's move some mountains for me. But God doesn't just move mountains because he's a magician, but his power works through us to make us trust him more and trust him more deeply for every step that he's taken us on the journey. He's not just a one-trick pony. He's trying to show us continually and trying to show me continually that he's got my back and he's preparing me for this season and the next season that I'm going in. The mindset shift that we can take and that Father Jacques Philippe kind of talks about is letting go. Can we let go this Lent? So again, Father Jacques Philippe for the win this week. I've really enjoyed reading this book and I've really enjoyed praying through it. So I said this last week, it's a 2-page a book day. Could really be almost a paragraph a book day. But yeah, I hope some of you have read this and are enjoying reading it, or if you got it last week, you bought it, that you're enjoying reading again. Yeah, reach out to me with your thoughts on this idea of doing versus being. Tell me your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you're going through with this. Let me know is it easy or hard for you to do versus being? Do you feel like you could just kind of fall into God's graces and let him into your heart easily? I don't know. I would love to hear from you. As always, thank you so much for watching, for listening. I appreciate you spending some time with me today. It's been great to chat with you. Reach out to me, talk to me, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you on your thoughts in today's episode. Talk to y'all later. Peace. Bye.